Hey everyone, Randy here with you again. I am in Texas right now. I actually picked up a job shortly after I got back from Utah, having to do a bunch of sampling of some outcrops in Texas. So I thought I would combine it with some of the fossil hunting that I wanted to do. And right now I'm walking along the shore of Lake Texoma. There's supposed to be some pretty big giant ammonites somewhere around here, so I'm gonna see if I can find them. So let's go see if we can do that. So I'm not kidding when I say these things are huge. I just looked down, saw that laying there on the ground, and that's right next to this big piece right here, which these pieces already are pretty much bigger than any ammonite I've ever found in my life. So this is already pretty exciting, and these are just the pieces. So I have to admit, guys, I was so excited about what I was finding here and collecting that I didn't record much of any video, but I did at the end of the trip when I came back. So if you hang on till the end of the video, you'll get the lowdown of the geology here and see some of the other great stuff I found. So welcome to the Del Rio Clay. I'm actually at the Lake Waco research area, and you can see behind me, this stuff, it gets overgrown quite easily. So what you're kind of looking for are these steeper sections here that are eroded, and what's in here are some pyritic layers that have some really interesting fauna, and what I think most people come here for are the pyritized cephalopods here. So there's both coiled normal ammonites in this stuff, and then there's also turreted heteromorph ammonites in this material, which is pretty exciting. They're really small. I actually wrote a series of blog posts about this type of stuff, but these pyritic layers that have these diminutive fauna in there. So outside of the pyrite layers are sort of typical shelly oyster fauna that you find in here, and then these pyritic layers appear to me anyways to be largely composed of these sort of diminutive pyritic fauna. So we're going to see if we can find some stuff here. They do have very strict collecting limits here. You're only allowed to take 2 fossils away, so this is going to be like mostly a show and tell, find some cool stuff and show that to you, and only take the couple nicest pieces that I find. Alright, so I had to run a good luck here. I found a few things that are right next to each other, so I'm going to show them to you real quick. So that right there is one of the turreted, I think it's called like turritellis or something like that. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong, and I'll have a little pop up there. That's what it's actually called. But that's it right there. That's actually a heteromorph ammonite. And you can tell, if I can get this to focus, which struggling, come on, you can do it. There we go. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's little bumps on there, little ridges on there, and that's how you can, one of the ways anyways, I distinguish these from gastropods. So there's one there. Here's another one here. You can see those bumps on there are a bit larger. And then I found my first coiled ammonite right there as well. Rather small, and again, you know, there's my fingernail for size, so these are quite small. Just in case you don't believe me how small these things are, there's another teeny tiny ammonite right there. Can't even find it with my finger. There we go. Right there, pretty small one. I'll leave that there for someone else to take. It's fun looking for these things. You have to develop a gestalt for it. And I feel like I'm walking around and I know what to look for, but I'm not finding anything. And then I finally do, and then they start just popping up everywhere. And then when that happens, I always have this sinking feeling of like, how many tens of these things, if not hundreds of these, have I walked by in the past hour, because I just didn't have the proper search image in my head. But don't leave fossils to go looking for fossils, so I think I'll stay here and see what else I can find. Another one. It's rather corroded, but it's cool to be finding ammonites. Just gotta find a real nice one now. Here is another cool heteromorph that's blurry. There we go. Now that's blurry again. I remember Mitch Hedberg used to talk about that with Sasquatch, that every picture of him is out of focus, and no one's ever considered that maybe Sasquatch is just an out of focus blurry creature like this ammonite right now. But oh, just had it there too. But anyways, that's another heteromorph, and yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a little corroded. Might find some better ones around here, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so this one's a little broken, but that's a big heteromorph, at least for the pyritized stuff. I think you can find bigger ones here in the higher unit, but that one you can see the knobs on it there. So yeah, that's the turreted, I think it's called Turritelli's heteromorph ammonite that you can find here in the Del Rio. Got gestalt for days. There it is. That's a decent size, a little corroded, but that's a decent size ammonite right there, especially for this stuff. You know, like I was saying, the interesting thing that I find about these pyritic zones is that they seem to demonstrate that not only were the benthic communities stressed by a low oxygen environment, but that seemed to extend oftentimes up into the water column as well, which is why these predatory ammonites, in my opinion anyways, also seem to be diminutive in size. I mean, I can do a size comparison of, you know, this one relative to what I was finding earlier today up north at Lake Texoma, which will be a pretty I think incredible to see the difference in size of ammonites you can get. Again, I mean, these are different species. It's not to say some species don't grow larger than others, but it's still kind of a fun comparison anyways. It's my understanding these are pretty rare to find here, but check this out. Shark tooth. Pretty sweet. I found one that's worth calling it a day or almost a night on. But yeah, that looks pretty awesome right there. I'm in Austin, Texas now, and I'm actually on some of these gravel bars you can see behind me here. And this is material, we're standing on the Austin chalk, but in these gravel bars you get a bunch of material that is washed out from up above. And there's Exogyra oysters all over the place. They're really cool, and I'm going to show you that here. So if you check this out, these gravel bars are just nothing but absolutely tons of these oysters. And this is a deal where I'm sure watching me pick these up, you're going to be able to see ones that I'm missing. But there's one. There's another, if I can get it. Just looking at the camera screen, I can see more. There's another one there. That's, and then there's another one. Oh, it's windy. Windy. But check this out. It's totally worth it. There's a couple there. There's some sort of a coral, I think. There's another one. There's another one. They're just everywhere. You can fill up a bag with these things in a matter of minutes. These two are so small, I just keep dropping and picking up the same one over and over. Look at that though. And more. I don't mind working hard and splitting open tons of rock and finding rare stuff, but I'm not gonna lie, being able to just sit somewhere and pick through a gravel bar and pick out a gazillion fossils is pretty darn fun too. Check this one out. It's a good sized one for this stuff. Ooh, yeah. Monster oyster. Not really, but good enough. Here's another one. This is like a great spot to introduce somebody to the hobby of fossil collecting, because there's just so much stuff here. It's like you're not going to fail at this. You're gonna find something, unless you're really bad. I mean, if you do come here and you don't find anything, it's one of those like you might want to consider a different hobby because you're not cut out for fossil collecting. So just in the time it took me to record this, I got all that right there. So yeah, good spot to introduce somebody to fossil collecting if you don't want them to strike out. Check this one out. That's a big one. Woohoo! I also saw somewhere a little piece of Churty agate. Kind of neat. So I'm looking at stuff I don't normally look at. This is much younger. This is the Carrizo Formation behind me, which is a sandstone. It's kind of Paleogene in age. And then you can see right here this big unconformity running through there. And up above that is this quaternary age gravel. And I'm actually interested in the units that are below this, but where the exposures are, the roads are under construction. I can't get there right now, but we saw this outcrop and wanted to check it out. But what is really interesting is that many of the pebbles that make up this conglomerate are actually agates that are pretty cool looking. So check out a few of these. So here's one. It's kind of hard to see in the sun the coloring on it, but there's some reds and green banding agate that goes through there. I wonder if we can, maybe if that looks a little bit better there. I also found this nice piece that's split in half. You can actually, the way the light hits it, you can see the conchoidal fracture on there, but that looks cool. I'm actually gonna bring some of these home, cut them up on the saw, and see if I can put a polished surface on it and see how that comes out there. So yeah, this is pretty incredible, the amount of pebbles that are in here. Many of them are like these sort of quartz agate pebbles, which are pretty phenomenal to look at. How exciting when I first looked at this material here, which I thought was bedding, actually isn't. It's called lease gang, which is actually a weathering phenomenon. So you're just seeing an artifact of water flow through these deposits, and that, you know, precipitating different minerals and leading to this banding that's in here. But you don't have to brush off much of that surface, and that goes away there. So there really isn't a whole lot of well-defined bedding in this rock. It's kind of a large, poorly consolidated, massive sandstone in here. So this is an interesting spot. These are dinosaur tracks that are preserved in some beds within the walnut clay, and these occur in the town of Leander, Texas. They're not real well known. This isn't part of a park or anything like that. You just kind of got to figure out where they are and walk up the creek and find them. So it's really neat. Right, so I am in South Texas. I'm actually not too far from the Mexican border, and this is the work side of my trip that I'm having to do, which is to come out here and collect eagleford samples. So I can show you this outcrop here real quick. So This is one of the outcrops I'm stopping at. What you have right here is the Buda limestone, or Buda, depending on where you're from and how you want to pronounce it. And then overlying it here's the contact, and this stuff up here, that is the Eagleford, which is known locally as the Boquillas Formation. So that's what you're seeing up here. So this is a major target of oil drilling for what they call unconventional resources, which is basically organic rich mudstone and carbonate fossil fuels, oil and gas. And so that's what you're looking at here. And then this gets, you know, buried much more deeper, and that's where they're actually drilling wells into this stuff. But along this highway in South Texas, there's pretty spectacular outcrops of it here. So I'm out here sampling a bunch of this material. So I got a couple more days of sampling left, and then I'll be headed back up to the north there, maybe do a little bit of fossil collecting on my way home. Hey everyone, so I'm out in the Finnish Shale now, which is Pennsylvania. It's a Graham Formation. This is actually some of the oldest rocks that I'll be in on this trip. They're 300 million years old, something like that, around that neck of the woods. A lot of the Cretaceous stuff I was working in was 100 million years old. So this stuff is absolutely loaded with fossils. If you watch the video that I posted, I don't know, a month and a half ago or so out in Pennsylvania, it's time equivalent to these rocks. So you're seeing a lot of the same material, same fossils. It just has some different preservation on it here. So, but I did happen to find a goniatite, which is what I was really excited to come out here and find, and I'll show you that now. So here it is right there. It's a small one. A lot of the goniatites here, especially the fully preserved ones that you find, are pretty small in this stuff. And I've never found these smaller ones in the shales back home. I've found the Metacaceres and I've found Panoceres around there, but a lot of this other stuff is totally new to me. So I'm pretty excited to keep digging around and see what I can find. But just to give you an idea of what this rock looks like, you know, you can just see there's fossils just laying everywhere in this stuff. So I'm pretty stoked on this one. It is tiny, but the colors on them are unbelievable. All right, so now I'm out in the Goodland limestones. We're back in the Mesozoic here, looking for ammonites again. You can see the limestone behind me. And what I'm doing right now is walking this creek in these gravel bars to see what I can find. And let me show you what we're looking for. So if you look around here, you start scanning these areas, you find a lot of partials, but every now and then you find a complete one sitting here. So that's what I'm looking for. That's a trip maker for me right there. So in addition to ammonites, there's also these big giant snails. And we know I like big giant snails. Oh. Oh, wow. All right, good morning everybody. I'm on the last day of my trip. I'm actually headed back north, and I came back to a spot on Lake Texoma that I actually stopped at on the way down here, but I was so excited about the spot that I didn't do a whole lot of filming or explaining what exactly it was I was looking at. So wanted to do that real quick. What we're in here is the Duck Creek Formation. Again, it's another Cretaceous age rock here, and you can see this big limestone pavement right here that I'm standing on. So in the lower part of this, there's interbedded sort of chalky limestones and shales, and then you can see this marly, shaly stuff up above here. So this is loaded with a lot of like inoceramids and oysters, gryphia, things like that. And then this pavement that's down here, if I can get it to show up, this is what hosts these big giant ammonites. There's echinoids in here. There's a few heteromorphs if you're lucky to find them and whatnot. So that's what we're looking for. And I think what people really come here to see are these huge ammonites, and I'll see if I can find some and show them to you. So here's an example of one. This one's kind of sea-worn here, I think from the waves lapping on it, but you can see my hand there for scale. But this isn't even one of the biggest ones that I've seen around here. I'll keep finding some and showing them to you, but just to give you an idea, I'm probably not going to go after this one. It's cracked, and I don't really like beating the crap out of the rocks here. There's enough calving off this bank that you can see here that usually you can find some that don't require a whole lot of destruction in order to extract them. Check out that monster right there, just sitting there in the bank, just waiting for a few more waves to bust it out. If we walk along, you can see a lot of these are sea-worn or lake-worn, I guess. There's one in the bank. That would have been a nice one if part of it wasn't taken away. Looks like, yeah, just something of one there. There's the negative of a smaller one. So there's actually, for as many of these huge ones that exist here, there are a number of smaller, detailed, very nice ammonites that you can find here as well. So it's a really interesting spot. It's kind of fun to walk along here. I guess the lake shore is quite low right now. I mean, you can see the dried algae on this, so usually this whole section here is underwater. My understanding, according to the flood gauge, this is about a foot below the normal pool, but one of the fishermen I talked to said it was actually about 6 or 7 feet low. So I don't know. I mean, definitely that being underwater is more than a foot above where the water level is right now. So I'd imagine, you know, it definitely could be more than a foot lower than it normally is. So these are just the pieces in the discard piles. Here's my boot for scale. Give you an idea how big these are. Like I said, they're just everywhere. You can see there's one there, there's another one there, there's another one there. That's the negative of a big inoceramid clam. But yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff through here. You can walk all this in there, and there's usually stuff laying around in there, echinoids and smaller ammonites and things like that, so I might mosey through that a bit too. It's interesting that up here you get these very large ones, but the inner whorls commonly seem to be, I'm assuming, crushed and then weathered out. These don't appear to be steinkerns, they appear to be sediment filled, and I'm wondering if it's hard for sediment to get into those inner whorls, and if there's nothing in there to preserve, you know, that to keep them inflated when the sediment gets compacted. I'm sure they just get crushed, and then they're really weak, and this wave action, I'm sure, beats them up and strips those centers of them out pretty easy. So there's that. I don't know, I'm not an expert on this section here. There might be someone else that knows better, but that would be my best guess as to why a lot of these larger ones are not as well preserved. But there's all kinds of goodies in this stuff. You could spend all day here if you didn't have to drive home. So if you're patient and you find one that takes a little bit of effort but not much to get out, this is the rewards that you can get here. It's going to be a heck of a time hauling this back to the truck. This thing is huge. I'll bet it weighs over 100 pounds, but it's a complete one. It was right there on the shore. The whole top of it was exposed. You can actually see some encrusting things on here and whatnot, so it's a really neat piece. I'm really glad I got it. It's a great way to end this trip. So that's it, guys. I'm headed back. I got about a 2-day trip back to Pennsylvania. I really hope that you enjoyed this brief look at all the spots that I hit in Texas. I came in here to Lake Texoma, went down to Waco, did some collecting there, then down to the Austin area and did a little bit of work looking for the Eagleford there and some collecting. Then went out to Del Rio and west of there looking at the Eagleford, which is the Boquillas Formation, and sampled that. Also spent some time a little bit east of Austin, looking at really high, Pleistocene and slightly older deposits there of the Wilcox group. And then back to Waco, and then to the Fort Worth area, looking for fossils there, and then finally back here to Lake Texoma. So it's been quite the tour for me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too, and hopefully learn something interesting about it. So long, guys. Thanks.